Hey, everybody. Welcome back to our noon podcast. Sunday, we have some special guests with us. We have Jack Overfield and Jerry Strickland, former managers at Houston Center. Many years of experience here. I just want to say thank you to all those that watch our channel, and thank you to everybody that's subscribed. Please share, like, and subscribe. That way there we keep getting our count up. We still have not been able to monetize our channel, but eventually I know that'll happen. A little update, we were able to do a Zoom meeting with some East Coast controllers. So if you're out there and you want to be part of this, email me or text me or DM me, whatever you can do to get a hold of me, and we'll send you a link and we can Zoom you in, and you can be part of the show. You can tell your story about your experiences in air traffic control. In a little while, we'll also have former FAA AMA representative and manager from Houston Center, Steve Stooksbury, with us. He's a little late because he didn't set his clock for the change in time.
Tells you what kind of manager he was.
He was a very lenient kind of guy. But anyway, we're here. We're gonna talk about the ATC training department and things that went on in training, and what can be done to maybe help the ranks of the system out there right now, because everything is pointing to low staffing. But we just got off the phone with Houston Center, and it seems that they've opened up a couple of new highs and a brand new specialty since we've been there. Before it was 6, now it's 7. Jerry was at one time head of the training department. I took over after Jerry, and I became part of that operation also. And Jack has given lots of instruction out at Houston Center, Nat Pro and other cadre positions that he's had before. So you guys want to weigh in on any of this training?
Jay, if you slid over here close to me, maybe we wouldn't block. We could see all of you, man. What do you think?
I'm not sure about seeing all of me.
Well, no, slide over. There you go. Oh yeah, there you go.
You just want to hug me.
No, I do want to hug you.
Yep,
Well, now they're a couple, but it's a couple of what? I don't know.
Hey, at least we're not in the space station, right?
That's true.
8 months.
That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be a NASA faux pas, and we know some people from NASA quite well. Tom from NASA was there for 52 years, one of the general managers. But we'll leave NASA for another time. Right now, our training time for making an instructor out of an air traffic controller, it takes many years to become a trainer. When you do over-the-shoulder evaluations as a supervisor, that's part of your training to become an instructor later on down the road. Or just as a controller, you get put into a training situation with a little bit of instruction before you get to be a trainer on how to fill out your training forms and how to watch, and not so much evaluate, but remain a safety partner in that position to your trainee. You, when you're training somebody, you just can't keep jumping in on them. Eventually, you have to let them go so you can see what they do. And you can imagine what that's like for the instructor during a busy peak period, to let somebody go all the way when you think that they've got the chutzpah to do so.
Yeah.
Jerry, you remember developing trainers for air traffic controllers. I'm sure right after the strike, it must have been very difficult to get trainers to train controllers.
I don't recall that. I was at that when the strike went down. I was supervisor in the Lake Charles specialty, and 9 of my guys stayed. I had 11 on the crew. 2 went. 9 stayed. I was probably the only crew in the house that the vast majority stayed.
Oh yeah.
And we sat down and had a little conversation, and I told those guys, do what's best for your family. To hell with the FAA, to hell with the union, do what's best for your family. Anyway, I had 9 guys. So when the strike went, I only got a couple of new trainees to me. Now, they took some of my guys and put them on other crews, but I don't recall from my time on the boards and stuff, OJT was kind of a, hey, would you take this guy? Yeah, you didn't get any extra money for it. Now you get extra money for it.
Right.
I don't believe that we had some formal established process where we got an OJT instructor. It was whoever wasn't busy would OJT that guy. I mean,
Yeah, I remember it was somewhere like 87 or 88, maybe there was an OJT instructor
Yeah, I
training
think so,
program
yeah.
that finally came to fruition because of people were filling out forms differently than others. So there was kind of a process to try to make it more uniform.
I know we were having difficulty with people reaching maximum hours on training and things like this, and you go back over the sheets, they didn't reflect deficiencies.
Right.
So you had a difficult problem with removing a person or you know,
Extending their hours, maybe.
extending another 30 hours of OJT.
Yeah, the substance wasn't there in the sheet to show
Yeah,
the
yeah,
necessity to be
The
able to.
documentation wasn't sufficient, so I'm assuming that's why. Like I said, I even though I was head of the department of training for 10 years, I had a liaison. It was a contract deal. I didn't go over there and sit down and watch what they were doing.
Yeah, who was that? That
They're
was
good people.
Who was over it? Was it Bob? Excuse me, we have another guest coming in.
Steve Stixbury.
And while he's gone, we're going to tell you what's wrong with left-handed controllers.
Yeah, I'm one of them. Yeah. Anyway,
That's what's wrong.
hey, by the way,
They're already like
when a controller provided on-the-job training instruction for a
This
radar
has to be a-
controller
be a-
trainee or a manual controller trainee, the OJT
Just some
instructor
water
had to write up an evaluation sheets, and the evaluation sheets had different categories like separation,
Slide a little bit more
judgment,
over to me so they can see.
phraseology.
There you go.
Hey, Steve.
Hey, I want to, everybody, this is Steve Stooksbury, former FAA MA representative for controller managers and also operations manager, controller, and all around good guy,
Facility
as
manager
far as I know.
for
and for-
Washington Center.
Oh, and former Washington facility
In
manager.
Albuquerque Center, assistant.
That's correct, yes, sir.
And then you went to Washington.
He's had several hats.
Several hats, yes.
You know that
More than a few hats, yes.
Thanks. Fred says we're looking good.
Fred, you're not talking about me, are you, Fred?
Well, anyway, so we're all here, and Steve just walked in. We were talking about training, and Jerry was filling us in that he doesn't really remember the formal training for air traffic control instructors, but he had a department underneath him, and I was asking him who was in charge of that. Do you remember?
Herb Henderson was the what do you call it, training contract guy?
Yeah, he mentioned
For a while, and then somebody else done Herb. But I had 10
Bob,
years. I mean,
wasn't
3 or
it
4 people went
Bob?
through there.
Now, you talking about the facility
Yeah,
itself?
facility. Yeah, it was Henderson and then Bob. What this? I can't remember his name.
So that was after my time, 2002 when I left. So,
Yeah.
uh,
Wow, was it two? Yeah.
but Mark Childs was liaison to that for a couple of years for me when he worked for me, and then Stan Jorgensen for 3 or 4 years.
Right.
So, I was kind of the guys that said, "Hey, that's your job. Go do it. And let me know what you need. I'll do."
Yeah.
I didn't think it was my business to go in there and count the strips for them and mark them for them.
Yeah, I was thinking that you were going back even further, and I was thinking, well, who was the head of the training department then? I guess it was Joe Bledsoe. Is that right?
Oh,
No, I don't remember being Joe. Joe was he was a Houston area manager for a long
But
time.
wasn't he? I think when I came in, Joe was up there for a while.
Sandy
I
Samuels,
didn't
wasn't
know
he
that.
part of that too? Or was he just QA? And then there was Don.
Ellis?
Don
Don
Osmond.
Don
Ellis,
Ellis,
yeah,
yes, uh-huh.
He
Don
was
Osmond.
training and then he went to QA also.
Yes, there was a lot of movement around that time.
Right.
I
And
think.
then there was Bob Webster. He was air,
Airspace and procedures.
airspace
Yes,
procedures.
But the training, I do not know what the training hours are today. But my logic goes weird, like I mentioned a minute ago, that the aptitude test we all took told somebody somewhere that we have a high probability of success with all these different tests. And then somehow or another, they went with something else. And without knowing if the person had really had an aptitude for this, to me, it's sort of like hiring people with no arms to be carpenters. And how in the hell are you going to train him to use his feet to do the job? Over the last 3 days, I've texted quite a few people, including Stooks, and when I came in, it was 40 hours, and it was up or out.
Per sector,
Per sector.
Per sector.
Per position,
per position.
manual and radar.
Right, because remember, and the Laredo especially, the way I remember it, I was texting Jerry last night. The way I remember, you had 40 hours like on Victoria, 40 hours on Brownsville. Of course, most of the time they were combined up, so you got 80 hours total. So the trainer
And
would
you
break
could-
it.
Yeah.
Trainer would break it down. Said, okay, well, you got 2 over here and 1 over here, or however it worked out. But you got 40 per sector, all the way through
That's right.
the
And the vast majority of people, to me, my recollection was my own experiences in training over and over. And I was upstairs for a year as an instructor. And that first sector was 35, 38, 40, 42 hours. And the second sector was maybe 18. The third sector was like 10,
Right.
And I now hear that we're training people from 100 to 300 hours of OJT. So, and then you're talking about issues. All right. I read somewhere that we had 10,255 air traffic controllers and we have 6,000 trainees. In 2019,
Currently.
So
we
now you're
just
saying
hired-
that,
hang
and
on.
the 10,000 is not the same as the 6,000. That's not added in. They're separate.
The
Okay.
trainees are
Okay.
separate. And they're retired and training, and their shifts were killing them, blah blah. But they negotiated the damn shifts, so don't whine about it.
Right.
The training backlog is what I hear, and they're running 3 shifts a day at the academy is what I
Yes.
hear.
I was up there. I saw that.
So if you hire 2,000 people a year in March or April, and you hire 2,000 people and you get them in there in June, and you 3 shifts a day, you're dumping trainees into the facilities that are going to need 200-300 hours of OJT. So in 2019, we're still training people that came in 2019 because they took 18 months off because of COVID. So in 2020, we hired 2,000 more, 21, 22, 23, 24. So that's like 9,000, 8,000 trainees. And if you don't get them trained up pretty daggum quick, you're not going to solve the problem. You're going to make it worse and worse and worse. Pretty soon, you're going to have 12,000 trainees sitting on their butts with maybe 4,000 instructors out there. You have to figure out a way that you get higher aptitude quality people that are going to check out in 30, 40, 50 hours.
Right. And you still want to be able to retain some seasoned controllers to be able to train those trainees, or else the tool bag for the trainee is going to be very small.
So, what OJT instructors get paid actually? What, 10%, 15%?
I think it was 10%. And I was reading, I guess last week that there was an article, I think in Forbes magazine, that was talking about maybe they had raised it. I'm not really sure about that. I know my son does that now, but I've never asked him how much more he gets paid for that.
The Secretary of Transportation right now has made public that they want to offer $30,000. I'm not 30,000, 30% pay increase for the new hires to go to the academy,
Right.
which would be a good thing. I mean,
Right.
that doesn't mean everybody gets 30% across the board in the FA, but that 6,000 trainees adds up, because if you said there was basically maybe 9,000 people that entered the training program going back 6 or whatever years, and I think they have a 30% washout rate at the academy. 30% of 9,000 takes away 3,000. You got 6,000 people that were entered in training.
Right.
But now, the
But if
Train
you
to Succeed. Remember when Train to Succeed came?
Train
Right?
to Succeed came, yes.
Okay.
I kind of recall, but I don't know exactly the details of it. But that's when the time on the sectors went up.
Yes.
When they raised that up, and I believe, and I'm not 100% sure because my mind is not like it used to be. But anyway, I believe that was a negotiable thing with NAC. I believe that they negotiated that.
Well, you could go up to 120 hours
Yes.
maximum
Right.
initially.
Yeah.
When I remember seeing
Yeah.
trains.
But I was talking to my wife last night about it because she was
Yeah.
into it pretty heavily, and she says, yeah. And then they had benchmarks that you had to get a look see at like 40%
That's right.
and a look see at 70%. and then
Yes.
before certification.
Right.
So that was some of the things, but it was like 120 hours or something to that effect.
But the problem was they weren't making it. I mean, when they got to the 40, when they got to the 60, when they got to the 80, there still wasn't enough meat there. There wasn't enough
right.
abilities shown for you to say, yeah, let's keep moving on. But yet you continued. Somebody gave the check mark, it wasn't me, to let it keep going. And that's when I lost the training.
I was going to say that, when we went to the Training to Succeed or whatever that was called,
Right.
you knew at the 40%er that this person is probably ready to go.
Yeah.
And you may say, okay, get a few more hours, and you give them 4 or 5 more hours, then you certify them. And then if you think about that at 40% of 120, Jerry, do the math for me. But anyway, that would be back to what we were talking about when we first hired on. It'd be in that 40-hour, maybe 50-hour time range. But then there was the others that you give them to 40% and you do that. And you'd say, well, you really need some more help on this or something help on this. And you get them to 70 and really you hadn't moved the curve at all.
No.
And everything had stayed the same.
And the thing is, at the 40, when you check them off and you certified them at the 40, that's actually when they actually started to learn, because they got to sit there at the sector by themselves or with an R side. And, the R side, see, stop that. You got to do this.
Right.
Oh, you're on your own, And they would let them go until the light came on, and then you would get them back into training. They were actually learning at that time.
Right.
And you had a seasoned controller sitting next to them that was able to run the sector and see what's happening at the same time. And that's how they developed their skill. You knew that they were ready to go. They might not have been 100% ready, because
Right.
nobody's ever 100% ready. You don't know everything.
Well, what you're
Except
saying
if
is
you're Jerry.
Yeah, and bottom line, what we're saying here, you don't ever stop learning.
No, you don't.
No, every day you're going to learn something.
But it goes back to the capacity to learn. If we're going to, I don't have any issue. I like that. But I think even before we had that,
Right.
that was probably in people's minds, the 40%, 50%, stuff like that. How many different OJT instructors do you have? 6, 7?
I got to tell you that, I was lucky that I only had one OJT
Oh,
instructor.
really? Oh, my God.
I really had one.
I had at least 7 or 8. Well, see, it
But
was
I came in
different,
Chicago, so my guy was all over me. He wanted me checked out right away. That first week, he said, "Man, you got it. You can do this." And you go upstairs. First week you rip. First week I rip strip. Next week I'm upstairs. I do all the D sides.
Yeah.
Come back down, certify on all the D sides, and then within a month back upstairs do R training. And then a month later, I'm back downstairs certifying on all the R sides.
But then you had 4 years Air Force air traffic.
I did.
too.
I did.
I came
I
in-
did a lot of non-radar.
I came in after being in a refinery for 10 years. But anyway, so I had one. And, basically they just said that person and it was Jerry
Groves.
Harris.
Oh man.
Really
Yeah.
serious. And he just said, Steve, he said, I will tell you if you mess up.
Yep.
And you sit there and you just do your stuff.
That
You
guy
just
was
do
so
your
laid
stuff.
back.
And if you said to him, what is this? Let's say, what's a contact approach?
Uh-huh.
And he'd say, you know where the 711065 is? And I'd
Yeah.
say, yes. He said, well, go find out what a contact approach is.
Yeah.
When you get through, you come back and tell me.
Right.
And then, but it was great. I mean, I never really had any trouble, and he would let me do. And like you said, because when you're sitting there doing,
You learn.
you learn. So, I thought he was great with me. I mean, certain people have a knack for training, and maybe me and him just melds together some. There's other people they're just excellent trainers. The late John Sanfilippo and the old Laredo specialty was a wonderful trainer.
Yes.
My wife was a great trainer.
Bill Sykes.
Bill Sykes was a great trainer. I never had the capacity that they had.
Now, let me tell you, when I
You didn't have the tolerance.
when I got selected to be an area supervisor and Sykes took over my training, man, all I could think of was thank God.
Right.
Because my trainee couldn't figure out how to descend somebody out of 24 to hit Glenn. And it was every day Every day I was going every day.
Well, see,
But-
there was a huge difference in 68 and 69. It was all white males, ex-military, white shirt, dark trousers, dark shoes, tie on, no long hair, no beards, and none of that. You know,
Right.
and a guy sitting behind you with a cane that would, pow, shut up. You don't talk to the radar controller. You don't have a conversation over something. I mean, that was where it was on the Houston especially.
Yeah.
And see, you had a year in grade that you had to stay.
Right.
So when I went from manual controller to radar controller was 3 consecutive pay periods. I already had a year as a D-side while I'm OJTing on the radars. So when they waived that year in grade requirement, in like 2 days, I got 40 hours of OJT on every sector that we had because I've been working them for 6-7 months, you know. And so I was promoted from a 10 to 11 to a 12.
And how long a period was that?
That's 3 consecutive pay periods.
Okay. Well, there was a shortage when you came in the FA too, right?
True, yeah.
'Cause I remember that when I went into the Air Force in 1969, I said there was a shortage of air traffic controllers at the FA. So that's why I said, hey, I want to go into that career field.
Right.
But let's get back to our staffing now. And you made a very, very important point that we have all of these trainees sitting there kind of spinning their wheels because since 2018, they have been gone for a while and now they're put back into the system. And we have this next bolus that's going to be coming down from Oklahoma from those 3 shifts every day going to be put into the system. How are those trainees going to be trained? I mean, there's only so much traffic. There's only so many sectors. And if you've got somebody in front of you that's kind of dragging their heels, but yet you've got to make sure they check out because I don't know if train to succeed is still in place or not.
It is.
How are you going to get those other people through without them sitting there twiddling their thumbs on the government's dime?
Sure, I like the I like the concept of,
But that's only if
but I
somebody's
understand what you're
actually
saying.
following.
I
it.
like the concept of it, but there have to be finite limits on it, to me. And the 120 seems ridiculous to me, but I would much rather prefer that all trainees have a finite amount of train time. Give it an incentive. If you don't get there, when you get to that point, you're going to get a check ride. If you don't pass, you're out of the agency. Create some incentive. Don't put it out there. Well, if you fail, we'll give you another 1,000 hours. And if you work out, we'll send you to another facility for 5 years.
It's got to be up
You know,
and out.
one guy in the headquarters told me that we have people retiring from the FAA that have never fully certified in any air traffic facility. That they move from facility to facility to facility and never certify fully in a facility.
Did you see that, Steve?
Yes,
As an
absolutely.
air traffic manager?
Absolutely. Oh, I saw it as a controller and I saw it as a manager.
Did you?
We had one in our specialty in the Corpus Laredo specialty when I was controlling.
Who was that?
Well, the weather's bad. It's real
Okay.
bad.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah. But
But he came from Memphis to Houston
I didn't know that. Okay.
as a trainee.
Yeah, I got you.
And we had another lady that left Houston Center and went to another facility
Uh-huh.
as a trainee. But yeah, we had people that were training forever.
Well, that one controller you're talking about that left he left that male controller left the FA entirely, I believe.
I do not know that for a fact.
Well, I don't know it either, but
I don't know for a fact, but I know that he transferred down as a trainee. And people are training, and they're training forever.
well, you know what?
I'll give you an example. When I was the air traffic manager at Washington Center, you'd have staff meetings once a week. You sit down with all the OMs and support managers, and and they were talking about this one individual that, they were talking about, well, he didn't, how much training did he get? They were, the training department would give their, I said, Jack came to work only one day last week and he only got 3 hours of training all last week or whatever. Whatever. It was just unbelievable. I'm just sitting there listening to it, and I listened to it for about a month. And I said, I said, well, can somebody give me a background on what Jack's up to?
Uh-huh.
And they said, well, Jack hired in like 4.5, 5 years ago, and he's still working on his D sides.
Uh-huh.
And you know, he doesn't come to work, and I says, well, have we documented all of this stuff? Has this been documented? Well, you know, the soups are kind of, you know how all that
Right.
thing goes.
Right.
And I said, well, let's start doing that all the time. I said, because if he don't want to come to work, I can help him.
Yeah.
But so anyway,
Yeah, you can make that.
before I left the facility, he was still in training.
Yeah, yeah.
And, you know, and there's parts of that story that I won't get into
Okay.
here
I got
because
it.
it's
Sure.
just ridiculous.
Sure.
And you think by that time, the time I left, he'd been there 6 or 7 years now.
Uh-huh.
And he still is not certified.
But that's just a part of a different type of problem, what you're talking about.
Right.
So no, I disagree. That is the problem.
No.
In
that's
the
just-
FAA
that's-
right now,
But Jerry,
it is
that's just
6,000
a part
people
of it.
being treated that way.
Yeah, and the reason is there's some kind of atmosphere that says, "Oh, I can't document this guy. I can't." Why? You are cutting off your nose to spite your face. You're trying to fill your positions up, but yet this guy, you feel bad for the guy. Well, I feel bad for him too, but move over. Let somebody else take the spot that can do the job.
Yeah.
This person can't do it.
First of all, that's the rules.
Yeah.
If you dare speak up, you
That's-
will probably go.
and that's gotta
just
change.
like just right here. When he's the manager of the facility, and nobody's going to tell him there's a guy ain't coming to work 1 day a week, and nobody slapped the hell out of that guy and put him on 45-day suspension. I would have done it in a New York second.
And I
Hell,
would,
I did it as a temporary team super. I fired a controller for doing it. Same kind of crap.
and
maybe
that's
the
what we
only
need. We need people to
supervisor
be
in history
able
to do
to,
it.
to do the job. It's like when you get a survey, everything is okay. Check. You don't check 10 on everything. That's wrong. Why even take the survey?
Right.
It's the same thing when you do the evaluations. If you're a supervisor and you're going in, you're going to give this guy an evaluation, an over the shoulder to see where he is in training after your trainer
Right.
said that this guy's just about ready. You're going to wonder, hey, you know, this guy made this mistake, trainer. How come? Has he ever made that mistake? I don't see it on this sheet. You know, you're not putting down, and
Right.
that person needs to be held accountable for
Right.
not doing
But
their
you,
job.
I'm telling you, you can't hold that person accountable.
You have
In this world that we live in right now, you are not going to be able to do that until that whole idea is flushed out of the
Right.
FAA.
That's because one in
That
every
whole
four
concept.
one in every four government workers work, and the rest of the three
That's
get
true.
away with it.
Right.
Okay.
Well, we did time on position surveys and all that kind of stuff.
I remember
Okay,
doing that.
We,
I remember-
we know the ones that were in there working traffic. Now,
And what did we do about it?
well,
They were getting their 18 hours a month. Proficient was 18 or 16.
Look.
16. They were just eking by with 16.
Well, right now we know we've heard all over the news that there's FA staffing shortages. I would say, what if there's actually two-pronged way to go after this. Okay, you can improve the training situation. You can improve the hiring program, right? Because we had aptitude tests that we had to take before we could even make it onto the register to be selected as an air traffic controller. Now that they were having some kind of other test, what was it called, a psychological test or something? I've heard that.
Well, we
They
had
still
the
have psychological tests.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
I never took a.
Well, I barely made it through.
You didn't have to
but,
write up about did your mom
They
love
sent
you,
me
did
to
your
a
dad
doctor.
love you, those kind of things. You know, those
Yeah,
questions.
yeah. Well, but
You know
anyway,
what? Jack's talking about what I think I mentioned it, maybe Jack or somebody else, but I'll tell you what I'd do. If I was running the FAA, if I was the FAA director right now, we'd have an effective tomorrow. And I don't give a damn if the union likes it or not. Do a Reagan on the union if you have to. Effective tomorrow, all trainees with 100 hours of OJT on a position will be given a check ride, pass fail. If you got 100 hours on a position and you ain't certified, pass fail. You're out or you pass.
Move over.
Everybody with 40 or more will be given a check ride at 40 hours or whatever that is, up to 100. And if you don't pass, you may get 8 to 24 hours of additional training. And if you don't pass that one, you're out. Flush this group of people that are sitting there sucking up 300 hours of OJT. Get them out of the agency. They are never, ever, ever going to be a good controller.
You're right. They're the cork in the bottle.
They just do not have that light bulb that goes on up there real bright. And I'm not there's some great, wonderful people, I'm sure of it. But guess what? I ain't hired great, wonderful people. I want people that can separate airplanes with an A, B, C, D, E plan and sometimes grab an M or an O out of their air and make it work. That's what we need as controllers.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it ain't going to happen until somebody says we have to. And we don't just have it at the controller level. Stooks knows this. Hell, we got it at the top levels of the agency. You're not going to say anything to one of these people because the first word, and I'm not talking about a black person. I'm talking about all the DEI hires. If you dare say anything, what's the first word out of their mouth? You just don't like women. You don't like boys. You don't like men. You don't. And we're going to go to HR, and guess what's going to happen on your record? You got to complain about so and so. You know, hell, you know the story about me.
I think they're pulling all that. They pulled all the DEI stuff out, I believe, out of government regulations now. So it's going to be, you're going to be held to the same standard as everybody else.
Right.
Well,
I mean, all these things were. I mean, if you tell me that you're better than me, that's racist on its face, or whatever you want to say. That's disparity right there. You have to be on the same playing field. And if I'm a better candidate than you, then you should select me. If not, you should be selected.
Well, the DEI, it may have come out, but it's still there. It's still pervasive throughout the agency.
Every level.
At every level, and Jerry's correct. If you look at someone incorrectly, then it's an HR or and it's going to be a EEO complaint, and you're going to have to answer stuff for the next 2 to 3 years on something like that. But getting back to DEI or any kind of hires, and Jerry said that too, we need people who are competent. I can't rebuild a transmission. Never could. Don't want to do it. But, it doesn't take guys from MIT to rebuild a transmission.
No,
and it doesn't take guys from MIT to be air traffic controllers.
That's right.
There is a competency there. And
there's a skill that you have or you don't have.
Or you don't have.
You have time spatial orientation or you don't.
And one of the things I read, and of course, social media being what it is, but I thought somebody had made a post the other day regarding hiring. And somebody said, well, maybe we need to look at people who are involved in athletics or some sort of team function that are able to work as a team, that have faced pressure in the past, because there's pressure there.
Mhm.
And, maybe that's another place that they need to look at and try to focus in on that.
Yeah.
But I've seen the very, very best controllers of all ilks, black, white, red, yellow. It
Male,
doesn't
female,
matter.
whatever.
It does not matter.
Yeah,
They're
right, it does.
some of the very, very best I've ever seen.
Yeah.
And so you can't just place one or the other on it, but it's a competency thing. And that's what we've got to get back to, is the competency.
Well, there's an aptitude.
Right, or an
Okay.
aptitude.
Now, I want to bring up this and see what y'all think. If a person hires on the FAA air traffic control at age 22,
Right.
with 25 years, they can retire at age 47. I think what we need to do is maybe raise the minimum retirement age to 55. So if you come in at 22, you have to put in, what's that, 22 plus 33 years, because if somebody retires after 25 years, you're going to lose a person that's really skilled at this point, right?
Right.
And then also, if somebody retires at age 50 with 20 years, they come in at 30, 20 years service, they're 50, they can retire there. I think that needs to be raised too, because pilots used to have to retire at age 60, not 65. And they're even talking about maybe that's too
You
young.
see the
They're
age
already-
50 thing and the age 50, all of that would work if the agency would hire in a steady flow rather than in these large boluses.
Yeah.
We don't have that luxury of, a constant trickle from Oklahoma. What we have is boom, here you go, train them,
Yeah.
or nothing,
And
And
that's a little bit dumbass myself too. I'll tell you. I honestly believe that you can forecast much better. I would much rather have 10, 12% overstaff than that 15 or 20% understaffed.
amen.
And if we're gonna run an agency, if you can't forecast that from the agency level, just like Jack's saying here about retirees, we already have an incentive to stay longer. You get more money.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know what the FERS is. Is it 1% or what, 2%?
1.7%.
So that's, well, mine was 2%. So that's close to it. You get 1.7% of your high three.
Over your
that
high
40
three, right? Yes.
Above that original 40 or whatever it was.
Yes.
All right, so there is an incentive to stay longer, but So I don't know what other incentive we could create that said, I'm not in favor of saying mandatory retirement to 55. Excuse me. You got to stay till you're 55.
Yeah.
I'm not in favor of that. I could see a bonus above the, a couple of grand a year to stay, but I don't see that. But back to what you were saying a second ago, that
Hiring
idea,
process,
huh?
the way we're hiring
Yes,
needs to change.
We have to be able to
Forecast.
somehow or another. We have to be able to digest the fact that, let's say at a minimum 1,000 a year, and now we have to look forward at who is going to be eligible in the next 4 or 5 years, and then we have to forecast for that and plug that in minus our 30% or 40%. And I think once we go back to aptitude tests, which I believe they will, that will lower that failure rate at the academy considerably. Probably down. I don't know what the failure rate at the academy was previously, but I doubt if it was more than 10% under an aptitude test. But I have no history of whatsoever. So that would give us a better logic. To me, I think going forward, a 2,500 number, and I'm okay with having a bit overstaff. You could have progression,
Jerry, because once those trainees come down, it's not like they fill that slot immediately. You got 4 years of waiting to get that guy or that girl up to that level that you just lost through retirement.
but you could have staffing levels at a facility like you have. Let's say at Houston, we got especially A has 65 people in it, and we have 65 FBLs. That's our staffing level. And you got 3 or 4 of them, you don't have 65 in any damn specialty now. I bet that's full performance level. So why couldn't you have a staggered level of when a